Welcome back to Frontier Echoes, the channel where we ride the untamed trails of the Wild West, uncovering the raw, daring, and sometimes hilarious stories that shaped the frontier. Today, I bring you a tale of desperation, courage, and a cowboy's honor. A story that begins with an unusual call for help, and ends in the kind of justice only the West could deliver. It was one of those blistering summer afternoons, the sun beating down mercilessly on the dusty streets of a small frontier town. Most townsfolk had sought refuge in the shade of the saloons or under the awnings of the general store. But in the center of it all, near the livery stable, a cry echoed, cutting through the quiet buzz of the town. "Please help me, cowboy. They stole my clothes." The words were frantic, desperate, and just enough to grab the attention of anyone within earshot. And there, leaning against a fence post, a lone cowboy with a weathered hat and boots dusted from the trail slowly turned his head. He was known in the town simply as Jack, a man of few words, a fast draw, and an unshakable sense of justice. Jack had wandered into this town days before, looking for work, or perhaps just a moment's rest from the endless horizon. But fate, as it often did in these parts, had other plans. The source of the cry was a young woman named Clara, barely more than 20, with wide eyes filled with panic. She was clutching a shawl to her chest, though it did little to cover her modesty. Her face was flushed from both embarrassment and the midday heat. They took everything," she gasped, pointing toward a group of ruffians disappearing down a side street. "My dresses, my skirts, everything I had. I can't go back to my cabin like this." Jack's eyes narrowed beneath the brim of his hat. He didn't need more explanation. In these parts, theft was common, but to steal a woman's clothing? That was low, even by the standards of the Wild West. Without a word, he adjusted his saddlebag, checking that his six-shooter was within easy reach. Justice, in this case, was about to ride in. "Which way did they go?" he asked quietly. Clara pointed, trembling. "Down the alley by the blacksmith, then past the creek. They were laughing at me, mocking me. Oh, please, you have to help." Jack didn't reply with words of comfort. Instead, he tipped his hat slightly, mounted his horse, and followed the trail of footprints in the dust. The townsfolk watched silently as the cowboy rode off, understanding that something was about to unfold that none of them would soon forget. The alley was narrow, flanked by crude wooden buildings. Jack could see shadows moving, hear the faint sound of laughter echoing against the walls. The thieves, confident in their mischief, hadn't realized the town's unofficial guardian was on their trail. Jack spurred his horse into a trot and approached the edge of the alley cautiously. From behind a barrel, he could see three men. Rough-looking characters, all grinning as they tossed the stolen clothes between them. "You boys enjoying yourselves?" Jack's voice cut through the alley like a whip crack. The men froze, startled. One of them, a stocky man with a patch over his left eye, squinted. "Who's asking?" he sneered. Jack dismounted with fluid grace, his boots kicking up dust as he landed. He didn't draw his gun yet. There was a certain advantage in letting fear do part of the work before introducing firepower. "You know right from wrong," Jack said slowly. "And you know taking what don't belong to you is wrong. Now, hand 'em over, and I might let you walk out of here with just a warning." The men laughed. "And if we don't?" asked the eye-patched man. Jack's hand hovered near the grip of his revolver. "Then I reckon you'll be sittin' on the ground wishing you'd been polite." One of the smaller men, clearly less confident than his companions, looked at Jack and then at the pile of clothes. His grin faltered. "Come on, he's just a cowboy," he muttered. "We can handle him." Jack's eyes narrowed, and in a motion faster than the eye could follow, he drew his revolver, spun it with expert precision, and fired a warning shot into the wooden wall beside the men. The crack of the gun echoed through the alley. "You handle me, I'll handle you," Jack said. For a moment, there was silence. Then the smallest of the three bolted, disappearing down a side street. The other two glanced at each other, calculating the odds. They weren't cowboys, they didn't know the weight of a fast draw or the courage of a man who lived by his own rules. Jack advanced, his boots steady, his eyes locked on the men. "Now, where's the rest of the clothes?" he asked. Reluctantly, they began to hand over the garments, muttering under their breath. Jack didn't relax until every piece was back in his hands. Then, with a firm nod, he motioned toward Clara, who had been watching from the corner of the alley, her hands pressed together in relief. "You all right?" he asked, handing her the shawl. Clara nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, thanks to you. Thank you so much." Jack tipped his hat. "Don't thank me yet. There's one more thing." The two remaining thieves had been watching nervously, unsure whether to run or surrender. Jack gave them a look that made it clear he expected them to leave town, or at least reconsider their life choices. With a mixture of fear and respect, they scattered, disappearing into the maze of streets, leaving only the echoes of their misdeeds behind. Clara took a deep breath, adjusting her clothing. "I can't believe you did this for me," she said softly. "I've never met anyone so brave." Jack shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Someone had to. Ain't right to let folk run wild, especially when they think they can humiliate a lady without consequences." The sun was beginning its descent, painting the town in hues of gold and orange. Jack mounted his horse again, dust swirling around him as he prepared to leave. But before he rode off, Clara called out. "Wait! What's your name?" Jack paused, tipping his hat once more. "Call me Jack. And remember, sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. Don't forget that." With that, he rode off into the fading sunlight, leaving behind a town that would talk about his courage for weeks to come, and a young woman whose gratitude would last a lifetime. That evening, as the townsfolk gathered at the saloon, stories of the cowboy who rescued a young woman from humiliation spread like wildfire. Jack's reputation, already known in nearby towns for his quick draw and sense of justice, grew even larger. But Jack didn't linger for accolades or applause. In the Wild West, a man's actions spoke louder than words. He rode on, chasing the horizon, knowing that somewhere ahead, someone else might need help. Someone else might cry out for a cowboy who could bring justice to an unjust world. As for Clara, she returned to her cabin that night, clothes in hand, heart full of gratitude, and a story that would forever remind her of the day a lone cowboy rode into her life and made everything right. Stories like these remind us why the Wild West was a place of both danger and wonder, where courage and honor mattered more than wealth or power. Jack was one of many who lived by a code that the modern world can only admire from afar. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of daring, honor, and the unvarnished truth of frontier life, make sure to stay with us here on Frontier Echoes. We bring the Wild West to life, one story at a time, celebrating the heroes, the misfits, and the ordinary folk whose lives were anything but ordinary. And remember, the next time you find yourself in trouble, whether it's thieves, outlaws, or misfortune, there might just be a cowboy riding over the horizon, ready to lend a helping hand. Because in the Wild West, justice isn't always law-bound, sometimes, it rides alone. Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another story from the frontier. And if you have a Wild West tale you think we should tell, send it our way. The trail is long, the stories are plenty, and the echoes of the frontier are waiting. Until next time, keep your boots dusty, your hat tilted, and your heart ready for adventure. Because out here, in the vast and untamed West, every day could be the day someone calls out, "Please help me, cowboy," and a hero answers.